Good evening. My name is Amitai Freeman. I'm the director of the Z3 project. We apologize for the delay. We had some technical issues with the streaming, but we're here, we're live, and grateful that you all joined us in person here and from home. Tonight we're going to have the honor to hear from Mr. Yossi Ben Arush. He's an educator and teacher at the Shalom Hartman Institute and a doctoral candidate at the Ben Gurion University in the Negev. And he's researching the Hasidic movement in Eretz Israel during the interwar period. And tonight we're going to focus specifically about the religious Zionist movement and the community, and hear and learn about some of their theological underpinnings, and investigate what about them is Messianic, if at all, and the variations of that community in Israel, and have the chance also to ask some questions. So without further ado, Yossi.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for those who are watching live. I think I should start with why did I chose this topic. It's not my academic field per se, and I think there's three reasons. Since October 7th, everybody is re-examining some assumptions and conclusions that they had throughout their lives. And I'm doing so the same. I grew up in a religious Zionist community, in a religious Zionist education. Spent most of my life identifying myself with the religious Zionist movement. Closer? Okay. Identifying myself with the religious Zionist movement. And October 7th led all of us to ask questions. Led me to ask questions. The second thing is that I remember a conversation that we had a few months ago, maybe over a year, when Betzalel Smotrich offered the name Religious Zionist for the first time in Israel history for a political party, not for a denomination inside religion and not for a sociological group, but a political party that is named the Religious Zionism. And we were questioning why do this, right? Because from the beginning of the State of Israel, we had the National Religious Party, Hamafdal, מפלגה דתית לאומית. And they all knew that they are representatives of the earlier movement inside the Zionist movement, Hamizrahi, that they wanted to add the religious element into Zionism. So why rename the party? And it's not only renaming the party. It's basically, because if you remember correctly, there was a lot of interesting things that happened. The Mafdal became, the National Religious Party became part of Naftali's Bennett party for a while. And basically was eliminated from the political map. And then later on, they left Bennett and they came back to what is now called the bloc of the Religious Zionist, with Ben Gvir's party as well. Why did they need the renaming? And when you see a political party that holds the name that you identified with as a sociological and religious practice, you rethink, what is this all about? So that's the second thing. What? You might just feel very comfortable. Finally, you have a representation, a political representation to what you always believed in. You're right. And the third thing that leads me this is that I've done something that I'm going to offer doing it today. But I always do it on the academic level. In several occasions in my life, I did it with something personal. And I'm trying to look at the larger picture. I'm a person that believes that all the movements, I don't know if it's me romanticizing reality, but I believe that a lot of the movements, or all the movements, are ideologically based. I'm trying to show it in my studies, in my academic studies, I'm dealing with the ultra-Orthodox Haredi community, and I'm trying to show how they are ideologically moving. And I want to, with you guys, explore the same idea of the ideologically moving society that is religious Zionism. And the way that I chose to do it today is I'm going to start with having a taste of the ideology that I think is moving a lot of it, and then narrowing it down to current day events. So I want to start with a verse from the Tanakh. The context of this verse is a list, very big list, of the heroes that King David had in his army. There's a very big list, and we all remember the Gashash famous song, Mayim LeDavid HaMelech, right? The 3 heroes that go to bring the well. So that's part of the list. It's a long list of heroes that King David had when he was king. So if you look at source number 1, I'm going to read it in English. Benaiah, son of Yehoiada, from Betzalel, was a brave soldier who performed great deeds. He killed the 2 sons of Ariel of Moab. Once, on a snowy day, he went down into a pit and killed a lion. Right? The Hebrew version is Uvnayahu ben Yoyada ben Ishchai Rav Pe'alim מקבצאל, הוא היכה את שני אריאל מואב, והוא ירד והיכה את הארי בתוך הבור ביום השלג. So the English interpretation, translation actually, gives us an interpretation. Because if I would translate this verse as close to the source as possible, it says that he did many deeds. He was the son of a living man, and he did many deeds, and he lived in a place called Betzalel, and he killed 2 of Ariel of Moab, which we don't know exactly what it is. It's maybe a name, but it also can be a position. Commanders in the Moab army, and he killed both of them. And then the story goes that he went down and struck and killed the lion inside the pit on a snowy day. And if you read the verse in its literary context, it means that he was a very brave man. And what is the deed of a brave man? There's a lion in a pit on a snowy day, so the environment is not good. You're not able to fight on a snowy day as you will on a not snowy day. And there's a lion, an actual lion, in the pit, and he went down and killed it. He was able to kill the beast, right? That's a brave thing you do. So he is mentioned by doing this brave thing. So that's the Tanakh, which is great because there's a lot of stories about bravery, and that's why he got it to be on the list. That's why he's one of the heroes that David had. But then comes the Babylonian Talmud, the Gemara. And for a very, very clear reason, does a very interesting take on this verse from the Tanakh. So the question the Gemara asks is, why is he called the son of a living man? Right? That's what bothers the sages who lived around 200 CE to 600 CE, 400 CE to 600 CE. They're bothered by the fact, why is the Tanakh so weirdly mentions Benyahu to be the son of a living man, right? And he says, the entire world is the sons of dead people, that Benyahu ben Yoyada gets the title the son of a living man? What do you mean? What do you mean he's the son of a living man? Because everybody else is not? It's a very... Maybe it means that he is the son of a living man and not a son of something else. Maybe his bravery or his might is not miracle. It's something that he grew up with. Good, I like it. But the Talmud takes it to a very weird place. And the Gemara Talmud says, no, you know why is he called the son of a living man? Is that to say, in source number 2, in the second line, the fact that the Bible refers to him with this appellation that all others children of the dead, rather, the verse should be explained as follows: the son of a living man who lives forever, who even in death is referred to as living. Man of Betzalel, who had done mighty deeds, right? We said Rav Pe'alim, that mighty deed, as he accumulated and gathered many workers for the sake of the Torah, who killed the 2 lion-hearted men, Ariel of Moab, so that's the translation here, as after his death he left no one his equal in either the first temple or the second temple. Right? Periods. The temples are called Ariel, and that's why it's called Ariel. And the last verse, and who descended and slew the lion in the pit on a snowy day, some say that this means that he broke blocks of hill and descended and immersed himself in the water of to purify himself. Others say that he learned all the Sifra, the halachic midrash on the book of Leviticus, of the school of Rav on a winter day. So what's happening here? They're taking the story about a brave man who fought a lion in a pit on a snowy day and says, this is not the story. You know what he was? He was a very smart religious guy. He was a sage. What did he do? He learned a lot of Torah. That's what he did. And when you think it says that he went down and killed a lion on a snowy day, it means that he learned a book, a midrash book, on a snowy day and really invested himself. And it's comparable, and that's what they're not saying, but that's what they actually are saying. It's comparable to kill a lion on a snowy day in the pit. So we have this character, this brave person, who is mentioned in the Tanakh because of its might, because of his physical force, that immediately comes to be this sage, that his might it's in his head. It's a scholarly might. He's an academic, and he's doing very hard work as academic, as a scholar of the Torah, and this is what makes him strong. This is what makes him powerful. I don't know if you've seen the movie Footnote, Ha'arat Shulaim. But right in the beginning, there's a very interesting scene. It's they're giving out the reward, they're giving out Pras Yisrael, and there's like a reception. And there's a voiceover on the reception. And the voiceover quotes a scholar who actually lives here in the Bay Area. His name is Daniel Boyarin. And Daniel Boyarin wrote a book that says that what happens, that the project of the sages from 14 to 600 CE was to take the, almost like in a Greek god way, portrayal of men in the Tanakh and turn them into scholars of the Torah. So everyone we think of as like this strong, powerful, physical person becomes in the Gemara, becomes in the Talmud to this academic, gentle. You can picture a library with like very dim light, and they're investing themselves in learning. And that's a big change to read the Tanakh like that, right? It's a big change to read the Tanakh. And for many years, that was the common way for religious people to read the Tanakh. You read the stories, and King David is not famous for being this great warrior. He is famous to write the book of Tehillim. He is famous to be a great scholar, and so on and so on. That's what happens. But then someone else starts reading the Tanakh. The Zionist movement. And when the Zionist movement reads the Tanakh, they go back to the original. David becomes the one that beats Goliath in Emekailah. Strong person, physical person, right? The Maccabees are not those who had a religion uprising against the Romans. They had a national uprising against the Romans. They were physical, right? Bar Kokhba becomes a hero. When you look in the Gemara, Bar Kokhba is not a hero. He's a false Messiah. And then you see this whole attitude changes. And people start reading the Tanakh in what we assume now is the original context. And Benayahu is actually a very strong person that goes down to a pit and kills the lion. That's what he does. So how does this reading affect the people that read the other reading? That Benayahu was a scholar for many, many years before the Zionist movement started reading the Bible. So there's three, of course, always when you have contradicting theories or contradicting approaches, there's three ways. Either you agree, you confirm to the other approach, or you disagree, or you find some sort of a balance. So the majority of religious readers of the Tanakh rejected the Zionist reading of the Tanakh. They said you can't read the Tanakh in a secular way. It's weird. We have the tradition of how to read it. We have the commentators. We believe that the sages of the Gemara were the authority of how to interpret it. So don't give us any other readings, right? Some of people accepted it because it's a good reading and I think it's simple. One of the most interesting readings is by Rav Avraham Yitzchak Kohen Kook, who was the first chief rabbi of Israel, Ashkenazi rabbi of Israel, before the formation of the state. He was born in Lithuania, and he became the rabbi of Yafo after he came to Eretz Israel, and then he became the Rav of the Moshavot, of all the new settlements across the nation of Israel that were built as part of the Zionist movement after the Balfour Declaration. And then he becomes the chief rabbi of Jerusalem and the chief rabbi of Israel altogether. A side story about Rav Kook. Betzalel Smotrich's dad, Chaim Yerucham Smotrich, he's a rabbi in a yeshiva in Kiryat Arba in Hebron. When his son was sworn into office as a member of the Knesset, his father took the picture of Rav Kook that was hung in his office and brought it into the swearing, to the ceremony. And when he was asked why he does that, he says, because this picture was hung and I am teaching Rav Kook my whole life. That's what I'm doing. That's one of my life projects. And I wanted, when Betzalel became a member of the Knesset, I wanted him to look at the picture and remember his origins. That's his interview. So why am I telling this story? Because you would see, I hope, that Rav Kook has a major impact on what we see now as religious Zionism. And in his reading, Rav Kook does something very interesting. So let me give you a context of this reading. Rav Kook's write an article. The article is called Hador, the generation. And in this article, Rav Kook's tried to explain how can that be that we expected that the Mashiach, that the Messiah, would be a religious person, or at least a religious movement, and the redemption of the people of Israel is made by secular people. How can that be? We religious people, expected for many years that the Messiah is going to be this holy man that will come and save us in a religious way. And now when we see that people that are building the country, that are building the land, are secular. So how can that be? It doesn't make any sense religiously. So he wants to explain it. And he writes an article called Hador, the generation. He tries to explain what's going on. And in this article, he mentions Benayahu ben Yoyada. He mentions this hero. So, another side note. Rav Kook was translated, but very small pieces. He wrote a lot. He was a prolific writer. He filled up journals, and his table in Yerushalayim was preserved, and you can actually see like itching of a pen on the table itself because he just wrote and wrote and wrote. So he was a very prolific writer. He was translated to English, but very, I would say like 10% of what he wrote was translated to English. And also, he has a very beautiful Hebrew. because before the canonization of Hebrew by Ben Yehuda. He was a contemporary of Ben Yehuda. So he has a very beautiful Hebrew that is very hard to translate. And I've tried many times. Very hard to translate. He sounds like Agnon, Bialik kind of way, so it's very hard to translate. So I'll try my best. But I'm going to read it in Hebrew, and then I'm going to try reading and translating in English. So it's source number 3. איש חי רב פעלים מקבצאל, שריבה וקיבץ פעלים לתורה. Right? So we said that the Talmud says that that he did many deeds, that he gathered a lot of men to learn Torah with him. So Rav Kook quotes it. And he says, שאין שום מלחמה כבדה לו. שכל כוח אדיר המתחבר עם המניעות היותר נמרצות הוא מנצח. ושכל מה שיש להשתמש בו לטובה, הינם שווים תחת ידו להגביר אונו, עודו ונצחו. So he says, when I read this verse, and then I read the commentary of Chazal, what am I getting? I'm getting this combined reading. Benayahu had no war that he could not win, no matter if it was a spiritual war or an actual war. Everything that he had, he used for the good, to be victorious. That's what he did. הוא היכה את שני אריאל מואב, והוא ירד והיכה את הארי בתוך הבור ביום השלג. I'm skipping a line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the top. כהפרט כן הכלל, שהדרך הנכונה היא לא להתהלך במדרגה התחתונה של המוסר הכללי, אז אם אמנם הדרך היא נמוכה, חשוכה ומלאת מהומות מלחמה, אבל עם כל הכבדות שלה, מכשיריה נכונים לפניה, הכוחות הרעים מתחבשים, היד הגוברת תהיה אז של היושר, של הצדק, של הטוב והתושייה כפי המובן הרגיל והמוסכם, שגם אלה ברובם אינם עובדים במצב הכבישה, גם הדרכים הפרטיים שלהם אינם מלאים מלחמה וניצחון, יחדיו גם הם משתמשים בסמים המרים, למען יקומו ויעמדו על רגליהם, אבל מכל מקום העוז והצדק בימינם. He says, sometimes wars are physical. Sometimes when you have to fight, the fight is physical. It's the lower kind of fight, right? Something bad happens, you have to intervene and physically stop. I don't know, you see someone getting mugged. You have to intervene, so you have to have physical force to do so, right? But sometimes, it's only the beginning. It's only the first floor. Because then you would have other fights. And with other fights, you would need other resources to fight those sources. You would need justice, and you would need good, and you would need resourcefulness, and so on and so on. So he says, when I look at the character that appears in the Tanakh, and then later on appears in the sages, in the rabbinical literature, I see Benayahu ben Yehuda as a multi-layered person. He did actually fight the lion in the pit. That actually happened. He was a physical, powerful human being. But that was only his first layer. He was also a scholar and an academic and this righteous and resourceful person that used all of his might to fight everything that is wrong in all the levels. Meaning that the character that I've tried to portray of this academic sitting in a library, writing down, instead of this warrior, there's a totally different character. This character is someone who has a sword in one hand and the book in the other hand. That's someone who goes out and fights during the day, but then when it comes nighttime, he goes back to learning. So he is religious, but also, in a way, he is Zionist. Because he is fighting the actual war, he is building settlements, he is milking the cows, he is harvesting the wheat, but then at night he goes back and learns. That's the character that he sees. That character is the character I grew up on. When they told me, what is the epiphany of what we want to achieve? This is what we want to achieve. We want to achieve an individual that during the day does all the hard work, but then when he has some time, he goes and he opens a book and reads and learns, and he's an academic, and he does both, right? If Nordau is the Jews of the muscle, right, and Echad Ha'am is a cultural Jew, this is the combination of the both. This is the Jew that wakes up in the morning and goes to the Maccabiyah to win, I don't know, track and field, but he's also the smartest person in the Beit Midrash at the same time. This is the epiphany of what I grew up on. Epitome, I'm sorry. English is not my first language. Thank you. So, how does this affect today? There are, I think, and we spoke about it before, right? I think that today you can see, and I also spoke about it with Amitai, it is clear that this idea became a reality. Because when you look at mid-tier to high-tier officers in the IDF, those people are, at least narratively when they speak about themselves, they are this Benayahu ben Yoyada, a person that, they see themselves. It's someone who fights during the day, but have some time to read a book, to learn something, to talk, and so on and so on. And I've been to classes that I've been taught this reading of Benayahu ben Yoyada and how important it is to be both, the book and the sword. But then I want to tell you another personal story. I was 19, and I learned in a yeshiva in Petach Tikva, but I was I used my freedom to roam around and to visit other places. And one day, I found myself in what is known as Hagush, Yeshivat Hagush, Yeshivat Har Etzion. It's located in Alon Shvut in Gush Etzion. It's a beautiful Bet Midrash. I found myself there, and I was sitting there, and someone came up and said, the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Yehuda Amital, who was also a minister in the Israeli government and a very interesting and important figure in Israel history, came up to one of the students and says, look, I feel like I don't have enough connection with you. I want to get to know you better. I want to have a class with you guys. I feel like we don't have a connection. And traditionally, I like having connections with my students. So please, I want you to pick a topic, whatever topic you want, and I want you to tell me what the topic is, and I'll teach it to you. If it's okay, I have choose something you want to learn with me. So this guy goes back to the Beit Midrash, enters this study hall, and he says, look, we have a great opportunity. We can choose any text. It could be whatever we want. Let's think about it for a second. So everybody's grouping, and they're thinking about what text, like 19-year-olds, yeah? What text are we going to ask this older Rosh Yeshiva to teach us? He's such an important figure. He was already a minister, and then he returned to be a Rosh Yeshiva. We can choose anything. And then someone comes up with the brilliant idea. He says, let's ask Rav Amital to teach us Orot HaMilchama. Now, what is Orot HaMilchama? Orot HaMilchama is a group of texts, paragraphs, that Rav Kook, Rav Yitzchak Cohen Kook, wrote during World War I. And the first publication of Rav Kook's writing, called Orot, had those paragraphs. His son, Rav Tzvi Yehuda Cohen Kook, took all kinds of paragraphs and put them under titles, right? So we have Orot HaTchiyah, the lights of redemption, you might say. We have other paragraphs I mentioned. We have Orot Eretz Yisrael, paragraphs that are talking about the land. And right in the beginning of the book, there are like 5 or 6 paragraphs that talks about the war. And it was titled The War, right? And the text talks about what happens to the world, to the Jewish people, to the theology of the Jewish people when there's a war going on. So now, when this text was published, it was, I think, 20s. So people knew the historical context is World War I. But because Rav Kook has such an impact in the world in Israel today of the religious Zionism, this book, those paragraphs were read over and over again every time there was a wartime. Because the belief is that these words are eternal. And when they were written by Rav Kook in World War I, they meant they had such a significance, important, and they still do in every generation. So this book becomes a book that is, I might even go and say it's a manifest of how wars operate. So, but okay, Rav Amital was the minister from a political party that does no longer exist. It was called Meimad. Right? It's what the initials of Medina Yehudit, Medina Demokratit, right? Jewish state and a democratic state. It was the only left religious party. Rav Amital was the head of this party. That's why he became a minister, and then eventually it was swollen into Ha'avodah. It was swollen into the Labor Party. But that was a party in Israel, a political party that was religious left. So when someone came up with the idea, Rav Amital would teach Orot HaMilchama, it was brilliant. It was a brilliant move. This guy, who is clearly a left religious guy, is going to talk to us about text that talks about the theology of war, right? He comes from peace, and he's going to talk about the theology of war. That was brilliant. For us 19-year-olds, well, it blew our minds. We said, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to ask him. He's probably going to say no. He's probably going to say no. Why would he want to teach us this? We did something not so cool. We sent one of his relatives. He was in the yeshiva. We sent one of his relatives and told him, and he came back and said, you know what? Okay, I'll teach you that. I'll teach you Orot HaMilchama. So we all went into one of the classrooms. I was a visitor, but I enjoyed every moment of it. So we get in one of the classrooms and we sit down, and he says, I want to read with you 2 super important paragraphs in Orot HaMilchama. And I want you to tell me, what do you think those paragraphs are? And when you finish telling me what those paragraphs are, I'll tell you what I think those paragraphs are. So what I want to do, I want to do the same with you. I want to read with you the 2 paragraphs. And after I finish reading with you, tell me what you think they're talking about. Okay. So the first paragraph is actually the first paragraph in Orot HaMilchama. It is the paragraph on source number 4. שיש מלחמה גדולה בעולם, מתעורר כוח משיח. When there's a big war in the world, the Messianic power arises. עת הזמיר הגיע. זמיר עריצים. הרשעים נכחדים מהעולם, והעולם מתבשם. So it's time for all the wicked to disappear, and it's time for the world to evolve, to progress. Okay, well, you know what? I'll stop here. That's a good sentence that I, by the way, know it by heart. What does it mean? What does this sentence mean? When there's a big war in the world, the power of Mashiach arises. I'm asking you. Okay, good. People become more religiously inclined. God will help them to stay alive. Good. It's a religious awakening. What else? Usually, this text is understood as wars are good. Why wars are good? Because wars help us eliminate the wicked and help us show that the righteous are right. And then we can, it's another step in the Messianic process because we believe, according to this reading, that one of the steps to get to the Messianic era is to have a very, very bloody war, right? That will be a catastrophe. But this is good because eventually there will be a good thing in the end. He continues on to speak about what happens for those who die in war, right? Those who die in war, why did they die in war? And he says, right? He has his take. It's not our subject today. I want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 lines from the top of the source. ואחר כך כתום המלחמה מתחדש העולם ברוח חדש ורגלי משיח מתגלים ביותר ולפי ערכה וגודל המלחמה בכמותה ואיכותה ככה תגדל הציפייה לרגלי משיח שבה. So, in a very clear way, according to this reading, when the war is bigger, it's a bigger step towards the Mashiach. It's a bigger step toward the Messianic age. מלחמת עולם של עכשיו, the current world war, World War I, ציפייה נוראה גדולה ועמוקה יש בה. It brings a very big expectation. What is the expectation? מצורף לכל גלגולי הזמנים והוראת הקץ המגולה שהתיישבות ארץ ישראל. You know this war, what's going to do? It's going to lead us to reinstate the settlement in Israel, in Eretz Israel. Good. That's paragraph 1. First reading of paragraph 1. Let's do first reading of paragraph 2. paragraph 5. Source number 5, sorry. עזבנו את הפוליטיקה העולמית מאונס שיש בו רצון פנימי. We have left world politics. We were forced to leave the world politics. We the Jews, we were forced to leave the world politics we were forced to, but we actually wanted to. It was an inner desire for us to leave. Why? Until there will be a happy time, עד אשר תבוא עת מאושרה, שיהיה אפשר לנהל ממלכה בלא רשעה וברבריות. We wait until there will be a situation in which we can hold a kingdom without evilness. That is the time we hope to. זה הזמן שאנו מקווים. מובן הדבר שכדי להגשימו אנחנו צריכים להתעורר בכוחותינו כולם. In order to achieve this destination, we have to fight with all our might, all our forces. So this is what we need to do. We need to fight all our forces to what? According to reading number 1. We need to do it in order to regain our place in world politics. We will reinstate a state, we'll have an army, we'll have foreign affairs, we'll have a representation in the UN. That's what we need to do. And we need to fight with all our might to achieve that goal. Of course. Why are you comfortable? Why aren't you? Good. Right. So this reading assumes, right? It assumes some things you do not assume. It assumes that this can be read throughout history. Meaning no matter what historical event will come, and of course the big historical event that will come is World War II, it will still be as truthful as it was when it was written in the early 1900s. Right? It will be the same. There is an assumption that these words, and here I'm going to use a very strong term, these words are prophecy. This is a prophecy. This is not meant to be read in the specific historical context. It's a prophecy. That's the assumption that provokes you, right? Because you say, look at history. Look at what happened. Of course, it can't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. But the assumption here with this reading is that there is no historical context. Yeah. No, no problem. Right. No, it's not an academic exercise. I believe, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to funnel an ideology into contemporary practice in politics, and I think in everyday life. That's what I wanted to do. Yes. Yes. That's what I'm trying to claim here. And I can tell you that I know the beginning of the second paragraph by heart. And it's not because I was told to memorize it. It's because I heard it so many times. עזבנו את הפוליטיקה העולמית מעונש שיש בו רצון פנימי עד שתבוא עת מאושרה. I know it. Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, right. There is no representation of Jews in any organization of world politics, right? What later becomes the UN. What do we call it? Yes, we don't have any nationality, and it was good. Yes, and then will be able to establish it, and then we'll fight it with all our means. Okay. So this Rav Mital reads the text with us, and we all say, okay, we know how to read it. You know, it's such an influential text. We know how to read it. And he says, okay, I want you to tell you you're all wrong. You're all wrong. You're reading it wrong. And he said, I'm very concerned by the fact that this does not provoke you. Your reading of the text does not provoke you. Something is terribly wrong with you guys. He says, let me tell you how this text should be read. So first of all, historical context. This paragraphs were written during World War I. Rav Kook did not see World War II. He died in 1935. He did not see World War II. Would he write the same text after World War II? Said Rav Mital, he himself a survivor? I don't think so, he said. I don't think so he would write it after World War II. Second of all, this can be read, says Rav Mital, with the following assumption. And this is where it gets very practical. When I say Messianic, most people, no, I'll start from somewhere else. The word Messianic is now charged with a very specific charge. And that means that we, the Messianic people, believe that we need to do everything possible, even if it's powerful, even if it's destructive, violent, I was going to say. I was careful with violent, but I'll say it. Even if it's violent, to help us achieve the end goal of the Mashiach. That is what the word Messianic is now charged with. Rav Mital comes and says, this is not the intention of the word. The intention of the word Mashiach is exactly the opposite. The intention of the word Mashiach is when everything is totally peaceful. Everything is in peace. There is a world peace. There is an inner peace. There's peace between you and your fellow neighbors. It's completely peaceful. There is not one single violent action need to be taken. Because the process itself is a peaceful process. It is not that you have to act violently in order to achieve the end goal that is peaceful. The process itself is peaceful. And when you become more and more peaceful, you become more and more Messianic. It is counterintuitive to what we now understand of Messianic because we are so following the charge that this word was given. And now I said, let's read the same text with this in mind. שיש מלחמה גדולה בעולם מתעורר כל משיח. It's because the war is gonna end. Not because the war is a mean to the end goal. It's because we, as optimistic, peaceful people, see the end of the war and the beginning of a peaceful time. And he sees the UN being created. By the way, I don't know what he would say about the UN now or 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but when it was created, it was this great idea of peace. All the nations are going to sit together in this big hall and they're going to talk about the major things. They're going to bring peace to the world. What happens in the Holocaust, whatever. There are a lot of things that happen. But that was when it happened. That's the historical context. And why did we leave the worldwide politics? It's because we don't have any position in the world politics. All we can do, we are peace bringers. When all world politics will come to place, when this peaceful time will come, we will be the agents of peace in the world because we don't know anything else. We can't do anything else. The only thing we can do is be agents of peace. Right. Yeah, very. She likes it. She likes the peaceful things, yeah. So, I don't have a lot of time. I can get into the text and I can show you that each sentence in those two paragraphs can be read in those two options. One of them says there is an end goal and it's very peaceful, but on our way to the end goal, it's going to be very bloody. And another one says, no, even the process is very peaceful. And the only thing we can do is bring peace. And Rav Amital, what? Okay, so Rav Amital gets angry. Rav Amital gets angry. Why? Because it's such a fundamental text in Religious Zionism. It says, it's such a fundamental text, and you've all been reading it wrong your whole life. And he gets angry. He says, who gave you the authority to read it wrong? Who gave you the authority? Do you think you are better interpreters than me? Of Rav Kook? This is getting personal. I went to the yeshiva and I learned from the direct student of Rav Kook and I know exactly how to read it. I've spent many years reading this text. Who gave you the authority to read it differently than me? Who gave the other people who taught you the authority to read it differently than me? And he was very angry. And he was a very nice old man. And he got angry. And if you would see a picture of him, you wouldn't be able to imagine him getting angry. He had this long beard. Right. No, I don't think it's old text. I think that is it now or is it later? This is the question. Is it now? Should we try? Okay, I'll give you this. If you have an opportunity to do a little bit of Lo Yisa Od Goy El Goy Cherev, do you take it now, this minute, or you say, no, I want it all or nothing. I want complete peace or nothing at all. If you are willing to take complete peace, Until that point, everything goes. If you are willing to take small bits of peace, it's happening now. What I want to argue here is the following. Ideology, when it's translated to practical means, has three major dangers on its path. It could be misunderstood. It could be carried along badly, and it could be forgotten. Those are the three dangers of ideology when it comes to play. Think about every, big ideology in the 20th century, the century of ideologies, and it could be misunderstood. Someone is interpreting wrong the ideology and transforming it on. It could be delivered to the next generation, but not fully, or in a weird way, or in a way that doesn't apply, and it could be forgotten. Someone comes up with a great ideology, and it's just forgotten because, times has changed, and we're going in this weird direction now. So, it can be forgotten. I am not going to make a bold statement and say when some of the people in Israel politics today wake up, they have a wrong sense of this ideology in their head. I'm not going to make it because I don't know what goes on in people's head. I'm just going to say this. We cannot take this ideology and say that we are a part of it. We, the people who want us to follow Rav Kook, and I include myself in it because I love Rav Kook, and he's been, I told you earlier today, his picture is a picture that I carry everywhere I go since I was 18. And I love him deeply, and I don't think there's a week that has gone by that I haven't dealt with one of his texts in any form, taught, learned. We can't wake up in the morning and say, we are a part of this ideology without being very, very aware of the dangers that this ideology has when it comes to be translated into practice. It could be misunderstood. It could be that we learned it from someone who didn't taught us well. It could be that someone brought this to us, but it was not aware of the new situation that we're in, and it was translated badly into our generation. And it can also be forgotten. We have texts, but we have texts that we haven't seen. We had personal interaction that we never get a chance to have because Rav Kook died in 1935. When some of the leaders in Israel today, they wake up in the morning, I'm afraid that they don't have this. They don't have those dangers in mind. And I think that the danger of ideology, you've probably understood by now that I'm in love with the concept of ideology and ideology-driven movements. And I think that deep down, you can disagree, but I think that deep down we're all motivated by ideology of some sort. But when we had a chance, and I think that's a big chance since October 7th, we had a chance to reevaluate a lot of the ideologies we have and a lot of the things that are going on. I am offering to say that we have to put those dangers that every ideology has on the table. No longer treat them as dangers. We have to say, let's examine it now. Was it misunderstood? Was it miscommunicated? Was it forgotten? what was forgotten, what was miscommunicated. Let's talk about it right here, right now. Because if we're not, we're ignoring a huge problem. We can re-examine all the ideologies we want, but we have to sit on the table and say, wait, before we start arguing which ideology is better and which will prevail, what is the problem with our ideology? What are the issues that our ideology is suffering? And I think Rav Mital, in this very short experience, showed all of us who sat in this room, that we didn't have a minute to question texts that we've been reading. We were young, but we've been reading them for 2-3 years. And no one stopped for a second to reread those ideologies, those texts. How can that be? And he was very angry. And I understand why. He was very angry. The problem of ideology that you fall in love with it. You fall in love with the ideology because it brings you all the answers you need. Why am I doing this? Because of ideology. Why am I not doing this? Because of ideology. Why am I fighting everybody else? Because of my ideology. Good. Amazing. It gives you a huge motivation. But can you question your ideology? Can you say, let's rethink it? I think that a lot of people can't. And this is what I want to offer. I would say this comment. When I hear politicians in Israel today speak, I feel that they're talking from great passion. That you cannot, I don't know, maybe I'm naive. Maybe everybody says that they're talking from great cynicism and sarcasm, but I don't know. I see a lot of people talking from great passion. I don't see a lot of people doubting their passion and saying, wait a second, what am I saying now is what I believe, but I'm willing to put everything that I believe into question again tomorrow morning or in 5 minutes. And this, but I do. I see people questioning themselves. That's what you're saying? Yes, I see people questioning themselves. And that brings me back to the beginning of what I said, when the discussion about when there's a political party called Religious Zionist, what do you think? And I remember my friends sitting and talking about this, and everybody said, it is time now to rethink this idiom, Religious Zionist, and understand what does it mean. And I think that now, after the war, yes, they were concerned about they were concerned about representation. What do you mean? If you say that this is the name of the party, which means it includes me, do I want to be included? I don't know. Let me ask myself. I might have an answer that is yes. It's like I will start a party and I'll call it all the people that are left-handed. Right? This is how I call the party my left-handed party. Now, all the people that are left-handed should ask themselves, am I represented in this party or not? Right? That should be the question. That what happened to us. We were in someone's living room, and we asked ourselves, are we affiliated with this or not? That was the question that we had on the table. Right. Oh, to repeat the questions. Okay. So what's the difference between Dati Leumi and Tzioni Dati? It's a good question. I think that Dati Leumi is a addendum to an existing platform. There is Leumi, right? There is the nation, and now the Dati wants to add something on top of it, right? Tzioni Dati is the combination of two ideologies. It is not a construction. It's not the second floor of a building, right? There's Leumi, and we add Dati, right? Yeah, and that's actually the second floor. It's not the first floor, which is interesting. But we add Dati. Tzioni Dati is two ideologies working together. Now, what happens when those two ideologies work together? What happens in this connection between the two? You can say that everything when you can say when Zionism ends, religion starts. It's an interesting way to put it, right? When we are no longer Zionist, or when the Zionist project has been completed, now religion starts. One way. Another way to look at it says that everything that Zionism is religion, right? Everything that you do, that we do as part of the Zionist project, is basically a religious thing. It's also a way to look at it, meaning they're the same. And another way to look at it, that they complete each other, right? There's no Zionism without religion, and there's no religion without Zionism, which is all three of them are very bold claims, right? But it's two ideologies working together. So, and we asked ourselves around the table, right, in this living room, what does it mean for us? Right? We grew up, but now there's a political party, and what does it mean with the representation, right? Like the Rav Kook, what does it mean about representation? What are they going to write as their principles, and how is it going to affect on our principles? Because it's interesting. So some people said immediately, by the way, I don't care how he names his party. I'm not part of it. I don't care. Some people say the name is important. We care about the name. This is what we grew up in. We care about it. Some people say it's reclaiming what it's claiming, sorry, not reclaiming. It's claiming something that we have. And we don't want to be claimed. We didn't give the authority to claim in our name. It was a very interesting discussion. But going back to what happens after October 7th, I think that a lot of people are rethinking their ideologies and rethinking about the dangers in the ideologies. And I think that that's not the only field, that there's a miscommunication or disconnect between politicians and people in the street. And I hope that we will be able to sustain the passion and the motivation that the ideology gives us, and we will not be afraid to ask the questions and to truly understand where are we coming from and how we can do it better. I do hope that the people in position of power and leaders, I hope that if something good will come out of this war, is that they rethink a lot of the things they take as obvious. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Sure. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'll repeat the question. The question is this whole discussion just theoretical? Because when you look at the facts in the street, people are motivated by political power, more votes, getting to be in the coalition, money, right? A lot of things are at stake. So this week, I told this Amitai just now, a couple hours ago, I had, I've been trying to say, I think like 4 occasions, I was trying to say, look, I truly believe that people are motivated by ideology. And someone told me, no, it's not true. People are motivated by sociology and money and power and right. So first of all, I am naive and I do believe in ideologies. I don't know why. Maybe this is how they. Maybe I was brought up like this. But I will tell you something that I read in the same interview with Smotrich's dad about the picture of Rav Kook that he brought into this to when Betzalel Smotrich became a member of the Knesset. He says they meet every week and they learn together. And he says it's his son. Fair enough. He bragged and he said his son is very smart and he understands a lot. And he said that they don't just sit and learn, Gemara or Tanakh or something like that. They say they talk about the current situation and they open books to better understand the situation. Now that is a surprising, remark. Says his father is a rabbi, very distinguished one, and I don't know if he's naive, but he says that every week he's learning with his son about not about whatever. He talks about current situation. And also in the same interview, he says that he got a phone call not once and not twice, according to him, by Netanyahu that wanted to talk to him. I don't know. Maybe. Um, yeah. No, he says it. He says it. He says it. You can read the interview. He says it very clear. And Netanyahu was there to make him change his mind about something's his son. But going back to the question, I don't think it's an idea. It's a theoretical discussion. I think that even though it seems, and I'm pretty sure that the everyday thought of the people that are involved in politics is to get more political power and win and money and stuff. But what is the backbone? What is the inner motivation? What's the engine? About yes. So yeah. Yes. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, so the question is, can you articulate a little bit more about what the things that we spoke now, how is it connected to the actual agenda that some people have? So first of all, it doesn't talk about all the agenda. There are other places, and we can learn about it. There are other places about the land, the importance of the land, or the importance of the land with the people, and also there's other paragraphs about the importance, of course, and Rav Kook and others, about the importance of Torah or Judaism in general and the way it should be implied to the entirety of the nation, right? So we spoke about a very narrow part of it's a very small slice of the agenda that talks about war, right? Because of the situation, so we're talking about war, and I think that I can say this: war is not always, but most of the time it's inevitable, right? You fall into war, right? Because something happens, someone evades someone, something happens. When this happens, what is your perspective on the war, right? You say two options. You say this is amazing. That's a moment. It's a terrible moment. It's really terrible, and the losses are very hard. But I can see how this is going to end, and then peace will come. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I know it's hard, I know it's unbearable, but the bright side for me, it's one step ahead. It's another step in the direction of total peace, right? That's one. The second way to look at it is that you say a war is happening, it's inevitable, it's terrible, I can't even start understanding what's going on, but I'm not letting it control every aspect. I am allowing myself to insert non-war into the war. What am I going to do with, I don't know, Israeli Arabs? What am I going to do with them? As the war is happening, what am I going to do? What am I going to do if I have a chance to fix another problem while the war is happening? Should I say, I'm not going to fix the problem because we're all invested in war? We have to invest ourselves as much as we can in the war because then peace will come. Right? That's reading number one. Reading number two says, no, what are you talking about? If you can solve a problem now, solve it. We can insert non-war into the war. The war is not consuming everything. It's a good question. Is it or is it not? I'm saying this is the two readings. Some would say, no, war is war. It consumes everything. You can't talk anything else when there's a war going on. Let the war end and then we'll talk. Some people say, no, let's talk about things we can do during the war. Yeah. Yes. 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 Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Okay. So why is the reading? Why is this reading became dominant? I'll answer that until I get to the second one. Is actually something that I'm very curious about. Why is this reading became dominant? I think that in some way, this is my wife is gonna love this. I think in some way it's connected to Haredim. My wife says that I always make everything about Haredim. That's my thing. Yeah, I fell into a big thing. Okay, so why Haredim? Because what differentiates religious Zionism from regular religious people? What is the thing that makes religious Zionist people different? There are many. What? They work. Maybe they pay to. I don't know. Yeah, you can be no. But I actually think that the creation of this dominant reading helped build. Yeah, helped build a differentiation between religious Zionism and every other religious group in the Israeli society. And that differentiation was important to the self-definition and also for the impact that this society had on Israel. So it was like a feeding The ideology that existed was fed by, we need to say something different. We need to differentiate ourselves, and we need to do it in a way that will show that the impact we have on the society. So this is why I think, but this is my reading, at least. Yes. 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 Right. They could. They could. But right, right. I agree. But here is my. I'm not a historian of the state of Israel, but here's my 2 cents. Since '77, right, the left has had less and less impact. So when you identify with the right, you get to have more impact. Ken. Okay. So that's that's my answer for this. But the second question is more interesting because it goes back to my field. Uh, Again, I'm trying to, trying to. But I think the second question is, how do you make other readings converse with the prominent reading? I think it's something that we all say that we are doing, but we're not actually doing, and this is learning. Let's have a chavuta. Let's talk about it. We keep on. They're all like those texts are religious texts, right? And people are misinterpreting them. But this is the history of the Jewish people. We have texts, and someone understands A, and someone understands B. They're both vulnerable enough to come to the table and talk about it. Right? This is how we always operated. Even if we think completely different, and for religious people, thinking completely different can mean is this the worst sin in the world, or is it totally okay? And even though there were two very different people, they came to the table and said, look, this is the problem with your system. This is the problem with your system. Thank you for showing me the problems that I have. Thank you for showing me the problems that I have. Let's talk about it and figure it out. And we don't do that anymore, even though everything here is part of the Jewish canon, or part of the religious Zionist canon, at least. No one is having a conversation. No one having a proper limud. So you can say never, no, not never, almost never in Jewish history did someone proclaimed complete authority over text. No one. And the rabbinical tradition tells us that every time that someone gained complete authority over text, he was thrown out, because you have to allow other voices to be heard. Why is this different? This is not different. This is another great opportunity, because again, I love Rav Kook, and I learn a lot about him all the time, and he's a major influencer on my life. Why not sit around the table and say, okay, we love the person, we think that what he wrote has meaning, even till this day. Let's talk about how we can come to this. Let's talk about what kind of ideology, what kind of movement do we want to have? Yes. Yeah. Mm. It's a good question. It's a very, very good question. Yes, I'll repeat it. When we have this discussion, well, actually both sides of the discussion, do we have in our minds how it will be perceived by the rest of the world? No, I'm thinking about it for a second. I think I actually think that we don't, but we don't do it because this is not something, because the discussion here is the pre-discussion before we come and and present it to the world. Right. But to be an example for the world, I think this is again me. When you want to be an example for the world, you need to figure out what kind of example you want to be. So this is the pre-discussion before we go and present it. This is why I think we don't. When again, this part of the text, this part of the what I called here ideology, this part of this idea, we try to figure out what to do before we present it to the world, and then the problem is that sometimes we push something outside before we completely baked it inside. You know, it's not complete. That's true. You can. Yes, that's true. That's true. I, yep, I agree. Y- Yeah. Uh huh. Wow. Yes, I constantly ask myself when I am not willing to tell myself that this is that some part of it are not true. This is the difference between wrong. Okay, I would go with wrong. Yeah, I no. I'll go even harder. I go with wrong. I read texts and I say, okay, those texts are wrong. Those texts were written in a specific times, and I can say those texts are wrong. What will I do with this realization? It's a totally different question because it can change my practice, right? Because I'm willing to put every text into this scrutiny, and I'm willing to say, you know, maybe texts that I think are eternal, they might be wrong. Will it change the way that I operate? I don't know. But this is the difference between love and worship. Right? Love is I see the great light and this great idea that is being brought up to me, but I'm still using my inner critic to ask myself the question. Worship is whatever you give me, I'll eat it up. Just give it to me. So this is for me, I guess, the the biggest thing. But again, when it comes to practice, it's a little bit different because it can really change your practice. And this is, I don't know. We done? Okay. 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 Thank you. Thank you so much.